It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Road Tulips Consulting. We're here with Season 7. So glad you're joining us. I'm your host, Cecilia Supp, CAEACNP, and I'm so glad you're here for this exciting year of so many great topics, so don't forget to subscribe. This episode is supported by USAE News, the weekly community newspaper of associations, CVBs, and hotels. Learn more about USAE News at usaenews.com. This week I'm joined by first-time guest Jake Steinman. He's an expert on travel, specifically supporting those with disabilities as they travel around the country and attend conferences and events. It's January 27, 2025. Episode 270 starts now. Hey everybody, it's Monday, January 27th. Can you believe the first month of the year is wrapping up already? I can't, but hey, it's what happens. Something to do with the earth going around the sun. Welcome to this week's episode of Radio Free 501c. I'm your host, Cecilia Supp. I'm so glad you're here with us this week. I want to thank USAE News for being our supporter of this episode, and I think you're going to love this conversation with Jake Steinman, a first-time guest. We're here to talk about supporting people with disabilities as they travel and attend conferences and other events. But before we dive in, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to our global audience, wherever you happen to be. Hope you're having a great day, and thanks again for joining us. If you haven't followed us yet or subscribed to us on YouTube, please take a moment and do that when you have a chance. You don't want to miss any of our 2025 conversations. So, Jake, welcome to the show. You're here for the first time. Could you please say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Hello, and Cecilia, thank you very much for having me. So, I enjoy what you're doing. I am the founder of TravelAbility, which is a company an organization that helps make travel easier for people with disabilities. And we work through the destination marketing associations and management associations. And the reason we do that is because they have the relationships with the hotels, they have the relationships with the attractions, the museums, the restaurants, anybody that is touching the tourists, and we don't. So, so whatever we create and whatever we do, we want to do it through them because we we end up scaling something at a grassroots level. And so we basically have created our main assets are an annual conference that has grown to 210 people this year from 30, and just the and a playbook that we developed for destinations that they can use and share with all of their industry partners. And then we created a Shark Tank type event called Innovatable Pitch Fest, which is which kind of what it sounds like. It's basically a pitch event for assistive and adaptive technology innovations, contraptions, and services that can make travel easier for people with disabilities. So that's, in a nutshell, that's us.
That is great. And you founded TravelAbility in 2018. And since that time, you have built this awesome community that's working together. You're expanding your outreach, you're expanding the resources that you provide to people. And as you and I talked about as we were preparing for this episode, I myself had a short-term disability last year when I broke my leg. And I actually attended the ASAE annual meeting in Cleveland, Ohio, in a wheelchair and using my walker. So I really got that perspective from people. So when you're talking with people about how do you help people travel when they have a disability, and there's all kinds of disabilities, not just mobility. So how do you help people do that? And like, what is the most common question you might get from people or organizations that are getting ready to travel or organizing an event?
We don't deal with the end user,
Mhm.
so we're strictly B to B to C.
Okay.
That's how, okay. So just the, so Uh, so what I'm going to do is just frame this around the businesses that we're addressing. And as I mentioned earlier, the situation is the ADA was written for the median.
Mhm.
And so that means that it uh, is written for, basically the middle of the market. And since every disability has a spectrum,
Mhm.
it means it works for half the people and it doesn't work for the other half. And so we're talking about not only mobility, but also hearing, visual, sensory. So just these four areas that we focus on, cover about 80%, 85% of all the disabilities. And so what this means is, since it's written for the median and it works for half the people and it doesn't work for the other half, when somebody's traveling, they don't know which half they're in until they arrive at the hotel, as you probably experienced. And a hotel can be fully compliant, but really compliant for whom? And
Right.
just so because there's no ADA for information. So there's no law that says you have to put this information up. And so we had contacts with the travel industry, and we've been working with USAE has sort of adopted us, mostly because Anne was in a wheelchair, I think, and they have the lived experience. And so just the so and we've been working with them. And so what happened is, you know when they so it's like it's like a game of Russian roulette,
Mhm.
when you travel. So they're anxious, they have anxiety when they travel, that, oh, my wheelchair is going to be broken. Oh, the bed's going to be too high. Just all these factors that, they have to consider before they travel, because there's no information. So working with the destination organizations, they're really good at information. That's what they're about. They're about putting up information for the visitors and gathering information and organizing it in a way that's marketing oriented. And so we've made this progress with the leisure market. And so that's what uh, where we are right now. So we started with a landing page project. I'll just tell you, we did a research project during COVID where I had just, some interns research accessible landing pages for destinations. So we gave them a list of 165 destinations, and they tried to find an accessible landing page. And then by that I mean content, accessible content on for. And out of 165 destinations, they found 35, and they were incomplete, but they were something. So so we just went on we just said, well, we created this program, this initiative called Advancing Accessibility One Landing Page at a Time. And we created templates for DMOs for landing pages, and kind of what information should be in there, and surveys they could send out, stuff like that. And now there are 198 landing pages, DMO landing pages, and we expanded it to Europe and South America, not South America, but just Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean, and the top 25 countries in Europe, 25 cities in Europe. And so now we have all these landing pages at one place. And so now the job is really, that's the destination. And the landing page is like a signal. It's like some sort of a code that you're welcome here.
Mm.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And so, and then the other thing I wanted to bring up was when we did the project, it was really interesting because we would just, we would go to these websites and you couldn't find the landing pages. And then we would type in accessible things to do in Atlanta.
Mhm.
And there would be, their landing page would be there, but it was buried somewhere that you
Wow.
couldn't find it on the website.
Mhm.
Uh, or it would be a somebody who was a wheelchair user that had a blog, was a blogger. So the only information that's out there really is really with bloggers that
Mhm.
is reliable because those are the so there are different types of wheelchair users. Some wheelchair users are in a manual, they're young and they're in a manual wheelchair. Some are in a they have wheelchair assistance, they have these
Mhm.
little motors on the back, and some are in like a real, they are quadriplegics or they have MSA, they have some uh you know d- uh, disability that they need a lift to get from the wheelchair to the bed. And so just the so anyway,
Yeah.
so we went on this sort of, we looked at this, and why I'm bringing this up is because there are bloggers for each of those types of wheelchairs,
Right.
and they are the ones that people follow based on their type of wheel, so somebody, because they have the most reliable information because
Mhm.
they've experienced it. So then we created a database of bloggers, of travel bloggers,
Oh,
and
what a
just
great idea.
and just the that led into a magazine, to Accessible Journeys, and so anyway, and it's led to the meetings industry, and because the hotels are the primary problem in terms of the challenge, that the primary problem that can be that the destinations can affect. So you asked me one of the questions you were asking is something I get very often, which is where do I start? And and it just seems so daunting because you have all these disabilities, they all have a spectrum, and and you just don't know, how are you going to be. And so the common misperception is, I think, is they feel they need to be fully accessible for everyone in order to feature that page on their website. That's really why they bury it.
Mhm.
And just they think it's not ready for prime time. I mean, if their
Yeah,
website's
well,
prime time.
and that's really a
So
shame. If they brought that out, people would be able to find it more easily and let them know what's missing. So by hiding it, they don't know what they're missing. Because
exactly. So just
you know,
the
when I was staying at a hotel, I love that you used the hotel example. Because when I was staying at a Hyatt in Cleveland, I asked for a wheelchair accessible room and I had all the issues you outlined. The bed was really high. I couldn't reach things in the shower, even though it was a wheelchair shower. The door was too heavy for me to open by myself. So I used to have to go to the front desk and ask me to please help me the door just to get back in my room. So, but I'm a very proactive person. So I called the hotel and I said, what do you have? What can you do for me? I'm having a wheelchair delivered that I'm renting, So I had all those arrangements in advance. I'll be honest, I love that you're talking about all these landing pages and your blogger directory because I didn't even think to go to their website about accessibility. I just called them because I just didn't even think they'd have it.
Well, they probably, they probably have a filter. If you're going to book through one of the OTAs, they have accessibility filters. They have
Mhm.
like six of them. So just it's not enough. There's no measurements, and and there's no ADA for bed height
Right.
because wheelchair users. So one of our projects last year was called Heads in Accessible Beds, and it was and the theme was inches matter, and just the because and then so we had, I think, three destinations, and I think they ended up getting measurements. So they sent out a survey to the hotels, their hotel community, and asking the hotels to go into the ADA rooms and measure five take five measurements. One was, the distance between the bed and the floor, the distance between you know, the base of the bed and the floor, the distance, the height of the toilet to the floor, and and one other thing I don't remember right now, but anyway, but the variance was 12 inches between in the same hotel. And
Oh,
so
in the
just
same hotel. Oh my
same
God.
same hotel.
Hmm.
And so just so these are, so how is somebody, it's not part of the ADA, how are they to know, how would they know about that? So having that measurement, and this is why we started working with this organization called Wheel the World.
Mhm.
And they are like an OTA, they're like a sales force for ADA rooms. And but what they do is they send TaskRabbit people in to the hotels, and they measure 200 data points for each hotel, and for the entrance, for all the different common spaces, pool, I think they measure 14 data points around the toilet, the height of the brackets, really all these things. So, and then it becomes it segues into like a dating site, because, so you would go in, Cecilia,
Mhm.
hypothetically, and the first thing you would do is fill out your profile, which was, this is my disability, this is what I need, and you give measurements. You're in a walker, how high, and you sometimes use a wheelchair. So how high is it? It's a manual chair. It's probably 25 inches high, whatever it is. And then what happens is they end up matching you with the rooms that's that are closest to what your needs are.
Okay.
And so just the so we've been working with them, and we started introducing them to Destinations International, and then they started going to their events 2 years ago, and now they've done assessments of I think 100 cities, and they've got thousands of accessible measure, I mean, literally thousands of different locations that they've measured in 100 cities. So they must probably have, you know, 7,000 of these, so points of interest. And, anyway, so, but between them and us and DI getting behind this and USAE getting behind this and this sort of consistent look at kind of what's happened and what's happening with, and there's DEI fatigue. That's another element that's happened, which
Yes.
is really that DEI, parts of DEI have become, all of racial justice has become political
Mhm.
and become politicized. And equity is politicized, gender, and LGBT is politicized. It
Yes.
just but accessibility is not. And so it's a safe space for somebody to move into, and still do the work they want to do on the other parts of DEI. And so I think that's contributed to it.
Mhm.
And so, but the main thing is really that, the message that we're trying to really communicate to people in the industry is really that, that you have to go beyond compliance.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and as you can see in the room, and so one way to go And you can only, as a DMO or a hotel or a meeting planner, you can only do what you can control and what you can influence, right? That's
Mhm.
it.
Right.
And so just so you have to look at that and say, and so we kind of analyzed what DMOs can control and what they can influence, what hotels can control,
Hmm.
and with the hotel community, you have to, I've been working with owners, hotel owners. I'm trying to capture the mentality of the owner because they're the ones that are putting the pressure on everybody in these hotels to do these things. And their mindset around accessibility is a mindset of litigation.
Right.
And it's brought about by serial litigators who have a business model that they won't fight anything.
Yeah.
And because they create the price point at the settlement price point to be just what it would cost just to take it to one court setting and
Wow.
just and so they, it's like 15,000, 10,000, whatever. So they negotiate it. And so so they have PTSD from that.
Yeah,
And
and I
that's how they see accessibility.
and I can understand that because they deal with so many different kinds of people, and we are a rather litigious society. But one of the other things I learned in my experience last year was the hotel I stayed in was a historic building, and they also had to deal with the local historical society, who would not let them change the hotel room doors because they were historic. So the historical societies are not held to the ADA. And for those of you not familiar with ADA, that's the Americans with Disabilities Act. And when I was a young policy analyst at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that was one of the issues I worked on when that became law. And to your point, Jake, one of the issues with the ADA is the regulations are not very clear, and they weren't clear from the beginning. People didn't know how to comply, especially like small family owned businesses had a lot of issues. Like restaurants would call us at the US Chamber and say, how do I comply with this? We're a small restaurant run by a small group of people. Like if a blind person comes in, how do I help them? How can I make my menu accessible? And so answering those kind of questions is really important. I'm being mindful of our time because I know you did not have as a lot of
I
time
have
to talk with me today, so I hope you will come
Yeah,
back. But one last thought.
yeah. So when you're talking about getting started, okay, just so this is what we're trying to do at the conference. It's really helping people understand that they can communicate this to their restaurant. And just so when uh, I guess we should help the DMOs be sort of the point entity
Mhm.
if something happens and these guys have questions. But you could be accessible for blind people just by reading the menu to them and
Yes, that's
just
what we would tell them.
and so but now there's a technology now that the company out of Seattle has, where they can basically turn your menu into a talking menu with a QR code that everybody uses now. So just so they can just they just click on the menu and it reads it on their phone. And so just this is why I'm just saying there are all these technologies and innovations. And when you're talking about heavy doors, your problem with heavy doors, it should be an automatic door. And
Mhm.
just because they can't get out, you can't get in, you can't get, but even worse, you can't get out.
Yeah.
So just you have to call somebody if you're alone. And this is where where the meeting industry comes in because those people are traveling alone. And
Mhm.
just for the most part, they have to fly, they're traveling alone. And we had one of our advisory board members is in a wheelchair, in a power wheelchair, and he was and this is an example of training. Okay, so just the he was so they had a roll-in shower. He rolled into the shower naked, of course, and then it had a wand that and the housekeeping came in and basically cleaned the room when he was out. And unbeknownst to him, they raised the wand back up.
Oh no.
So he was alone in the room, couldn't reach the shower wand, had to roll himself out naked, call the front desk to bring somebody in to move the shower head down. And that's a training issue. So
Yeah.
they can control that. Those are things that can be. So we have like 40 tips in our playbook about low cost, no cost things they can do. And for let's just talk a little bit about meetings, okay? Because we've tried to make our meetings accessible, really accessible to be an example. And so we had uh, 4 people who were deaf at the conference, and we found out that we need ASL translators for 2 of them, required ASL translators. And I looked into this deaf issue and just the and it turns out that the ASL, there's a big shortage of ASL translators because there are only 500,000 of the 9 million people who are deaf or hard of hearing, only 500,000 know ASL, American Sign Language. And there's a difference in the school of thought within the deaf community. And there are deaf there are schools for the deaf that don't teach ASL because they don't believe ASL is easily assimilated into society. And so they teach lip reading and other things, they have other techniques to get that information. So anyway, so looking into this, I learned that the ASL, so the ASL translators are about 110, they're about 120 to $130 an hour, and you need 2 of them. And so it's like $6,000-7,000 for for the 2. And then we had some technology, which was a ASL, uh, coming in through a iPad for breakouts,
Mhm.
and just so we assigned them tables. But I found out I could write off half of that, write off directly from our tax bill. There's a section 44 of the IRS. You can write off up to $5,000. So you can write off half of whatever it is, up to $5,000, whatever accommodation you make.
Mhm.
So then one of the other uh, innovations at our event, our Shark Tank event, was a something called a hero hinge, which is a door hinge, and it costs between $7,000 and $10,000 to wire a room for an automatic door, which is why they're so rare. But his system, he has a battery operated system that he places in the canister. We had it at our conference. It took him 11 minutes to install
Hmm.
in the door, and it's like $1,700, and so it's much less. So we're finding all these. We've had like 40 products that have been through the grinder at our Shark Tank event, and so a lot of those products they don't know about. So we're getting those products out now. So we're creating Shark Tank for DI last time. I'm meeting with ASAE this week. Hopefully we'll do something with them at some point with their, because they need to know about all these different solutions that are out there that are inexpensive, and they get, and that's how I think once you get the meetings industry interested in this, then you get the hotels interested because it's very important for them. That
Yeah.
business is really important for them. So anyway, but the main, if you're asking me if I have any parting words,
Yes, but because Jake, I ask all my guests, what's the one thought you would like the audience to take away today, and how can they get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more?
okay, so I have 4 parting words. Okay, just the that I wanted to. So So it's really, what are the challenges, the primary core challenges for each of the disability in one word? So for wheelchairs, it's stairs.
Mhm.
For deafness, it's communication. For blindness, it's navigation. And for sensory and autism, it's about acceptance. And for all of them, it's independence. So that gives you, in a nutshell, if you focus on that, provide the information for that, then I think you have it. So
And what is the TravelAbility website?
travelability.net.
.net. Great.
Yeah.
Because I have checked out Jake's website. It's chock full of good information. Check out his origin story. It's really worth reading. So we have to go rogue for now, but I want to thank Jake Steinman of TravelAbility for joining me for this episode that is sponsored by USAE News. And Jake has shared a lot of great information for us. And basically, we just need to think about other people's experiences in order to create a better event. So thank you, Jake.
And one more thing I wanted to mention, which is really that there's a tsunami of baby boomers aging into a disability.
Mhm.
And whatever we do for the people who are disabled now is like a down payment for what is going to be needed, because they're aging into a condition that is really, that leads into a disability if they're lucky. And so that's the motivation, I think, and the rationale for investing in it. So
That's a great point. Yes, and having worked in the long-term care side of the health industry for a short period of time, I also know there's a lot of younger people who are living with disabilities earlier in their life, so they're having to deal with that for most of their life. So that's another perspective we should remember too. But I think that if I had a closing thought for this episode, it would be that not every disability is visible, and we need to be aware of that. Some people might have sensory concerns. They might need a little different kind of space. They might need a quiet space just to be calmer from a lot of overload of information, or maybe they need a place to plug in that power chair or wheelchair that's got a motor
yes,
on it. So
yeah.
let's just think about how people use things. I think would be the best way.
Sensory is the lowest hanging fruit
Mhm.
because it requires about a 35-minute training video. And just the because you're training somebody, you're not training somebody in technical issues. You're training somebody into acceptance
Yes.
and what to do when it happens. And just the so we've been working with a company called with an organization, it's a nonprofit called Culture City. They have
Mhm.
trained all the NFL stadiums, all the NBA arenas, all the Major League Baseball, all of soccer, and we're now working with them to help the DMOs train, for their visitor centers and hotels and things. So anyway, they were part of our
That
Shark Tank event. That's how we found them. So
That's wonderful. And again, Jake, I want to thank you for joining me this week. I know you have a very full schedule and you're doing a lot of traveling yourself. So we really are going to go rogue this time because we could obviously keep talking about this subject. Again, I want to thank Jake Steinman of TravelAbility for joining me this week and sharing all of this great information. And if you would like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com. If you're getting ready for the CAE exam or another credential exam this spring, check out our education page. We have lots of ways we can support you as you prepare to pass that exam and earn that designation. So, again, want to thank Jake for joining me. And on behalf of Jake and myself, we'll see you next time. That's it for this week. I hope you really loved this episode as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Learn more about how our experience and knowledge at Rogue Tulips can give your organization the strategic edge to reach its goals. Check out our website at roguetulips.com. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can work together. Thanks.